Hey, hello everyone. This is Karthik, founder of MyDBOps. First and foremost, thanks for MinervaDB for providing us this opportunity. So let's get into the topic quickly. So we will speak about how the MySQL Shell, this toolkit, can be used by the database engineers effectively in their production and their day-to-day operations. So bits and pieces about me. So I am Karthik.P.R. So I have a 11 years of around experience with MySQL. I have used to work with Yahoo before starting this, and I used to speak on various conferences and I used to blog about MySQL. Okay, so my focus, I have started MySQL around 11 years ago, basically started in 2010. Yeah, so about my DBOps, so my DBOps is into database services. So we do two major services. One is the database consulting services and the other is the database managed services. And we focus on the top three open source databases like MySQL, Mongo, and Postgres, and MySQL and its ecosystem, which involves MariaDB, Percona servers, Galera clusters, and everything. And we also support the database on premises and on cloud, and we are partner with AWS also. We are a AWS consulting services partner. Okay, so let's get into the agenda. So first and foremost, we will see about what is MySQL Shell, and we'll have an overview about it. And MySQL Shell also has many inbuilt utilities which can make the DBS life or the DBS life better. We will have a view on that, and then how MySQL Shell can be extended for the day-to-day engineering needs. So the most suitable audience will be the DBEs, DBAs, DBREs, cloud DBAs, DevOps engineers, or even the SREs. So MySQL Shell. The MySQL Shell was a command line tool, and it started way back with the MySQL 1.0. Sorry, MySQL Shell 1.0, and later, now to coherent with the MySQL Server release, now the versions has become 8018 or 8022. That's how it's moving. So you can consider it as a framework. MySQL Shell as a framework, and it is a Python based toolkit. When you say Python, it supports the latest Python 3. Of course, they have the backward compatibility for Python 2 also. So this shell as a toolkit, it can be used as a code editor too. When you say code editor, yeah, like it supports code. It supports three different kind of languages. We will see it in the further, and it also has a support for APIs. So it's not only so with APIs we can make much more automations with the URI and stuffs. And not only that, it supports MySQL. Of course, it supports everything which just uses a MySQL connector. You can use it too for MySQL, MariaDB, Percona server, and MySQL for RDS like Aurora or the RDS instances. So when it comes to MySQL, it predominantly supports 5.7 and 8.0. And when it comes to MariaDB, of course, it can't expect the login path or these kind of supports, but still the direct native authentication is there. And obviously it is a complete open source toolkit based on the GPL v2. Let's see, over to the shell. So MySQL Shell, technically, right, it is the operation of the DBAs or the DB engineers. How it has many inbuilt plugins and extensions which makes the and utilities which makes the lives easier. And using these admin APIs, we can build the database clusters like NodeDB clusters for a HA, and if you want to scale further by adding a node and with a router for a pure HA solution, it's completely possible. And it also has many inbuilt utilities which are getting added with the each releases to make it more better, and even for the integration with the cloud services also. And this is one of the tool which supports both the Linux and Windows. So if you look at the MySQL open source ecosystem, most of the tools are built for Linux environment, but this has the support for the major three OS, you can say the Linux, Windows and the Mac. Cool. So as I told previously, MySQL Shell supports languages as a code. So it supports three different codes, that is the JavaScript, SQL mode and the Python mode. And it can be easily switched between those modes. When you are working with the shell, you can easily switch between these modes of this language modes. Okay, and even they also support the OS commands just by giving the system command. Yeah, we have it in the MySQL terminal. The same kind, we can just use the MySQL system command and then invoke the OS related variables and OS related commands. So that is possible, and it was added in 8018. So Shell supports two kind of execution modes. One is the interactive mode and other is the batch execution mode. So in the interactive mode, of course, you can support the multiple lines. In the batch, it can be a line by line. And like if you look at the additional features, it has auto completion, yeah, by a tab, or the known keywords of the SQL or JavaScripts can be auto completed, and it also supports a multiple output format. In case the output format, it can be JSON. It's not only JSON, it's a JSON array or a JSON raw. The default JSON is a pretty JSON, and then TSV file, CSV, or the tab separated, the table format. The outputs can be of multiple types. MySQL Shell utilities. So MySQL Shell as the inbuilt utilities, which serves different purposes. So one of the first and foremost utility which was came in 8013 is the upgrade checker utility. Hope most of them might have used it for our DB upgrades. And there are many more like the JSON import utility, table export, parallel table import, or schema dumps. You have to hold the whole instance or a schema or a table level. The table level was introduced in 8022, and to load them back. That's a dump loading utility. So let's have a look at the MySQL upgrade checker. So MySQL upgrade checker, actually it works with MySQL 8 pretty well, as most of the community is moving towards MySQL 8. So this upgrade checker checks that is what are the major things to be taken care while upgrading, or should be taken care before upgrading to the latest version or between the two versions. So it can be from, let's say, 5.7 dot something or 8012, or even it can be between the minor versions also, as MySQL evolves more even with the minor releases. So this upgrade checker will gives is there any disturbances between these minor versions. Example 8013 to 8022. What's the difference? Or from a major version between MySQL 5.7 to 8.0. What are the major things to be taken care? Consider an example. In MySQL 8.0 there is no support for MySQL engine, but there can be a legacy table which could be hidden in the application, which can be still using the MySQL engine. So this upgrade checker almost detect 27 odd things. Okay, 27 odd things, and give the proper inputs, or what are the action steps to be taken, or are we ready for a upgrade. So so this is a shell output, usually is the extension, and these are the possible utilities available now. So check for server upgrades, schemas, and of course you have a help utility for everything. And JSON input is there if you are migrating out of a native JSON data store into a MySQL. Of course, this import JSON helps a lot. Fine. So other than that, there is also parallel import and table export, which really helps the CSV based files, where they split the CSVs and load it and make things faster. So if you make a huge CSV file loading, it is considered as a single huge transaction. What this tool does is they split it internally and then just load it inside. So this makes, and they load it parallelly. You can control the number of parallel threads, and that makes the data loading faster when you have a CSV kind of file. And there is one more thing which comes is the instance schema or the table dump. This is completely new, and even there are many more articles on it. So this is a logical backup. Of course, when you say logical backup, it's not like a SQL file, but it takes in the form of TSV files generally, tab separated values. Or of course, it supports multiple formats like CSV also. It takes the CSV files and split them and compress them even with the metadata. So metadata like the create table structure or the GTID, even to set up the replication, it is completely possible. So the dump instances, I want to take a whole DB backup. Of course, this is the right way, or a specific schema or for a specific table. So to load back, we have to use the load dump. So as I told, it supports multiple things. Yeah, it has support for the GTID. So even you can set up a replication post the backup is completed. And also histogram. We all know MySQL 8.0 has the histogram. And once the logical table rebuild is done, the histogram should be analyzed for the queries to use it perfectly. And so with the recent release of 8.022 in MySQL Shell, they have support for the OCA also. So OCA is the object store like the Amazon S3, where you can push it there and load it directly. So we have tested this in our environment even for a single table. While comparing to the other available logical backup tools, the performance boost is huge. So we have just given the graphs what we have tested. So MySQL Shell for database engineers. Let's see how the shell utility can help the database engineer further, because we have seen the utilities which are already internal, and we can see what are the other extensions which are present internal to make their DB's life better. So MySQL Shell, as I told you, as a single tool, you can connect multiple instances of multiple architecture. So MySQL Shell is an internal password store, which is it's a secret store, you can say. So it encrypts the password and store it. So you can switch to different instances instantly or different architecture. So it can be a cluster, or it can be a master, it's a replica set, or even a standalone, or it can be any cloud. So a single tool, right? Like from a single command, like a DB don't want to log into multiple machines. So he can just switch the connections and then do the operations instantly. Of course, yeah, so they can support the complex DB architecture, like to check the health of it. They can complex a complex DB architecture, yeah. So deploy HA clusters. So with MySQL Shell, we can use it as an admin API. We can use it and deploy the HA solutions like the InnoDB cluster with the router. So it makes things completely asynchronous one. Like router will take care of the load balancing and the HA in case of a node failure, and the cluster will give you synchronous data across the nodes. And even you can create async nodes with the InnoDB replica set. And if you want to play with the MySQL sandbox or the DB deployer, of course there is a provision for that also if you want to play with it. Yeah. How the InnoDB cluster can be. So there are multiple steps. Now I have pulled something from open source. This is a blog written, and also has given his code in the. So I'm just taking as a sample. Here it's just a step. So you've gone through this blog, right? He just makes the 3 hosts, and then he's trying to the JavaScript. So it looks for the my password, and then that's it. Only a couple of you have to set names, and then import the. So it will be pretty straight compared to what the information. That's much more better one. So I was just here. So I dig further and git, and I also made something for the replica set also. So what it needs, even for the InnoDB clusters, you just need a MySQL to be deployed, maybe an Ansible playbook or something deployed parallelly, and then need the user access. You deploy the source, so you mention this is the source and two new nodes. They connect, rebuild the nodes or add the nodes using the clone plugin. So clone plugin is another feature that comes MySQL 8017 and which is extremely fast compared to the other hot backup solutions available in the market. So it seems so you are getting rebuilt, so you don't want to wait, and even the replica. So this is scenario. Usually or traditionally when the DBS take a backup, right? This might take a MySQL dump or XCup, take the backup and to restore, and then for the apply log phase or MySQL dump the import will go on and they move. Yeah, because no clear notification when the backup apply log is completed. And then they came back and they set the based on the portion they have. Now it will be huge because the time taken to set up the replica, it's a general human. We might miss it. So now with the cluster, this clone plugins just take the data in the background, build a new node, and set the replication in, so you won't face a lag. Once online, the lag will be very minimal and they get synchronized. So your replica setup is taken care by. So this clone plugin, it can be used with Percona extra backup or not sure what. Depending it can be used with extra backup with MySQL or Percona extra DB cluster with MySQL 8.0. It can be much better. Okay. So yeah, and on top of it, you can also write custom shell plugins, and MySQL Shell also has. Yeah, I haven't mentioned this feature. It also has reporting modules there. If you want a specific set of reporting query to be called or scheduled, that can be done too. And there are many custom plugins which are available to make the life of the DBS ease the life of the DBS. So, or even you can make your own utility if you have a small bit of knowledge in this JavaScript or Python. Of course, you can make it, or even if it's a SQL, you can make some procedures and call codes. Okay. Yeah, using this you can connect the other services like router, proxy, SQL2. I haven't explored the orchestrator yet, but hopefully it might be able to. Fine. So there are some cases where the DB has to execute a complex performance schema query or this schema query while troubleshooting. Example, to find a transaction which locks the other, or the metadata locking, or even to get the slow queries from the performance schema for the last 20 minutes. Of course, we all know it's not pretty straightforward. We have to go through schema views and even with the control limits and everything. Or some cases you have to join multiple tables to get the needed inputs. So yeah, instead of copy pasting it or having it as a procedure inside MySQL, now we can have it in the shell itself, and we can call it, depends on the connection string we are using. So yeah, let us see what are the custom shell plugins available in the open source world. So Lefred is a community manager for MySQL, and he has done a great job, and he has written multiple shell plugins, and this is more active. I have given the GitHub link also. So it is more active. The last update was made around 9 days ago, and even he has updated to use 8022. Okay, so these plugins can help in the real-time troubleshooting. Example, if you look at the graphing solutions as PMM, of course they help a lot in troubleshooting, but they help us in analyzing what happened over the time. But if you want a real-time troubleshooting, you need the access to the SQL layer of it completely, like what's happened inside the MySQL, what's happening in it, what are my slow queries currently which is running, or what are the queries which is going for a more temp table that increase my disk IO. So yeah, this kind of can be run for the day-to-day operations also, and also for the troubleshooting at the real time. So when you look to the code, these are the possible things they have, like the collations, and here also for a demo setup, and the InnoDB helps, InnoDB cluster helps, and maintenance. Of course, it does the shutdown, not the start, because you can only shut down a MySQL remotely, not you can start it remotely, and has the plugins for the proxy SQL, other router, and the schema. So schema, it shows what is the available procedures, functions, and if you want to explore more, yeah, schemas, those are there. And security, when it comes to security, he has the modules which has it for the expired users, or what to say, expired users, or the what is the authentication plugin we use. Example, MySQL now support uh, SHA-2 plugins. Okay, but that's a default, but still we have some problem with that in some few applications, so we have to go the native application. So it shows what is the plugin used by the users, what is the, so those kind of stuffs can be, they are already scripted inside, just we have to call the scripts. And the user level security, like using the user, of course you can create a new user with a random password. I will show you the few examples how it is done. So this, yeah, they have things, and this is like a JavaScript for DB. So just you have to type DB and then you can get it. So I told it will be, there will be completion, shows the multiple possible codes. So here I have used what are the data inside my buffer pool. Okay, my tables in buffer pool. It's not a very good one to run in the product with a huge buffer pool. For just my local data set, I run it. So it shows, okay, what are my tables in the buffer pool and how much percentage they are in the buffer pool. And then user. So of course, it's simple. MySQL has now random password support. So here, this function, call this function, right? It looks, the user you have to create, yeah, created, and then you want password at the login to be changed, or the user login, other features, or even you can mention how many days you have to give the user access, the password expiry, the number of days. Now I have just ignored my, yeah, used my ID, that's a PRK, and then tried to set up a, I'm not ready to give a password, so I want a random password. So that's how it's generated. Now the user is created. So the host is open. Of course, we can do multiple customization for a user template, but this is like a very simple. Instead of making a grants, create user and then grants and then make a granular control, this is more like a template you built in and make the day-to-day operation easy. Yeah. So example is MySQL 8.0, we have the roles. So if you map the role, right, which can make it much better from a DB operating perspective, because security can a lot. So this is an example where we are trying to fetch the tables, very common. Yeah, here also we can have the can make it more custom for a particular DB or free percentage or sometimes or only the list. It can be done. So here I use one more thing I have seen this code is doing is loading the stats expiry. Ask your permission before changing the stat. Stats expiry is 1 day, so you want that stats are fragmented. The, you can say the internal analyze tables. Fred has done a good job in taking that into account also. So that's all, guys. So hope you had understood, or I might have done understood, like how the shell can be used in your day-to-day production environment. And thank you everyone for this opportunity. Or if you want to reach us, you can reach us in the below ID. And thanks again.
Hey Karthik, welcome to MinervaDB Athena 2020. Good to have you here, man.
Yeah, hi Shiv. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's a very great
Always a
event.
pleasure.
I'd like to be part of it. Yeah. Tell me, Shiv.
Love it. No, the event actually becomes great with the speakers and community members and attendees like you, man. Great to have you here. So welcome to MinervaDB Athena 2020 virtual conference. Would like to know about how MyDBOps is using MySQL Shell for troubleshooting your customer database infrastructure.
Okay. So, as you know, MyDBOps, we are into consulting and support, and we have a huge number of servers and the managed services. And the response time for the critical incidents matters a lot to us. So, what we have done is we have framed MySQL Shell as a single access point. So, whenever the DBA comes, instead of logging to any server manually, They use the MySQL shell, and it's completely automated, like the user connections and everything. And the troubleshooting scripts are auto-filled. The Python scripts and even the SQL functions or everything is automated. Like it will be auto-filled and it helps them in troubleshooting faster. Let's give a simple scenario. Let's say somebody wants to make a schema change. Hopefully we all use the online schema change as everybody, like the PG toolkit. But it makes sense. We might give a rough estimate saying that, okay, this might take only 30 minutes based on the size. But if there are 5 foreign keys and stuffs like that, it's easy to find out. And also in case of like an open transaction, like to find the right query and killing it or help in recovering it, that's where we automate the functions and they are integrated with the MySQL shell. And we are solving lots of problems with that. So this becomes one of our prime tool for the troubleshooting. Yeah.
So, good way of putting it. Like, we are all database systems geeks, right? We don't definitely use one tool to solve all our problems, right? Um,
Yeah.
as a database infrastructure operations engineer, right? You use a collection of logs. Specifically in MySQL, you use the error log, you use slow query log, you use the audit log, you use performance schema, you use time series monitoring, either a hosted or a free one, something like a Percona monitoring management, or your own plugin one on Grafana. So how do you complement all these things? Definitely MySQL shell is not to supplement something else, right? It's all there to complement each other, right? Where do you
Exactly.
integrate this?
Exactly. So as you said, right, it all integrated well. So it's not complementing any tool, but it is integrated with the multiple other tools. Example, let's say we have the performance schema, and I want the queries for a particular duration. Now I have a function which can be called from a
Mm-hmm.
MySQL shell for a particular host.
Mm-hmm.
Might have a client who has 100 hosts, and
Mm-hmm.
only one of the hosts can have it. So it will be
Mm-hmm.
easy to trigger and collect what are the queries which are run
Mm-hmm.
at the time from the performance schema and give a better insight for
Mm-hmm.
the troubleshooting. So it's like we are using performance schema and also the schema might be aggregated views, but for a time duration or a timely basis, if you want to recover something, that makes a huge stuff. And also for the optimization of the variable. Sometimes when you have a new server, you won't have the every variables optimized accordingly for the workload. So to analyze and get the things in standard, this tool like Shell, it really makes a lot in our production workload. Okay. And with the MySQL 8, right, we are also evolving a lot with the way we handle the servers. Like with the inbuilt utilities of the MySQL shell, also we use a lot for the maybe like upgrade checker or the data loading platforms. We use a lot these things. Yeah. So usually it is
Perfect.
integrated with example for failover and switchover scenario. Also, we also have this proxy SQL modules integrated for the failover switchover attempts needed.
Do you want to share with us something very real life scenario which you have integrated your MySQL shell ecosystem to the customer database infrastructure and um, solve the problem more intuitively?
Yeah. So basically, as you all know, the HA is really picking up with the clustering
Mm-hmm.
solution like the Inbuilt clusters
Mm-hmm.
and the new additions. So with MySQL shell, right? So what recently we got solved is previously we used to rebuild the servers using extra backup in case of
Mm-hmm.
a node failure or whatever, but took a lot
Mm-hmm.
of time. Now we have the clone plugin with 8017
Mm-hmm.
MySQL clone plugin. What we have
Mm-hmm.
done is we use the integrator, we have integrated with MySQL shell completely for the data
Mm-hmm.
tables and also for the replica setup, even before the replica sets came in. The InnoDB replica and stuff like that came in. Because so that's all the most of the problem. And also the one way we are also using is in the cloud environment like RDS.
Mm-hmm.
Like in RDS, you don't have access to the console, but you need
Mm-hmm.
all the logs of the. So we have all the slow logs pulled via the S3. They are stored in the
Mm-hmm.
S3 and they're accessible easily via these kind of tools like Shell for a node specific. Instead of making more complex thing, we use a shell and get the details listed immediately. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot. That's also lots of the problem with
Mm-hmm.
using shell. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as I told, right, as a company, we use multiple tools. Example, we use PMM a lot. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, very lot more for the PMM 1 and 2. And also we also use the Ansible for the deployments.
Mm-hmm.
So with Shell, we are making our operations easier. We are just trying to make the DB operations and the real-time troubleshooting very easier, and we are narrowing down the issues very quickly while comparing with the previous ones. Because instead of copy paking a SQL command from a performance demand, everything, now these things solve the use case very quickly and swiftly. Yeah.
Cool. So if I understand you correctly, one, you're using MySQL Shell to troubleshoot your MySQL ops. Two, you are looking at enhancing the efficiency of your MySQL database infrastructure, customer MySQL database infrastructure by automation or increasing the responsiveness, if I understand it right.
Yeah, you are right.
Okay.
So example, like in the operations, because now the time for rebuilds has come down massively with the clone plugins and stuff like that. Now we are automating it much more and reducing time. And also one of our recent use cases, we have a close to a terabyte of data to be rebuilt for partition. Of course, we can use MyDumper, but what we felt is this MySQL Shell utilities, the inbuilt utilities for the DB dumps and backups, they are really faster. They are really faster and more safer than the existing marketing tools. So we have explored it and we see a very good result also in that. So this is one of the problems we got solved recently, I would say. Yeah.
Got your point. Got your point. Got your point. Thank you. Thank you, Karthik. Thanks a lot for taking time, joining this call, speaking in MinervaDB Athena 2020. Wishing you good luck for you and your team for 2021. Happy holidays. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Shiv. Thanks a lot. Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pleasure, man.